Daniel Harris had been working with wood for as long as he could remember. As a boy, he would sit on the porch beside his grandfather, watching the old man whittle smooth shapes out of raw pine. Where others saw rough planks and splinters, Daniel saw possibility. Curves waiting to be carved, beams waiting to hold something together, lines and patterns that could tell a story. By the time he was grown, Daniel was known throughout town as the man with golden hands. His work wasn't just functional, it was beautiful. Garden fences with intricate latticework, rocking chairs polished to a gentle shine, gazebos that looked like they belonged in storybooks. People didn't just hire Daniel to build things, they came to him when they wanted something to last. His latest project, though, was different. This time, Daniel wasn't working for a client. He was working for the community. The town's small park had always been a gathering place, but it lacked something for the children. So Daniel, with his own savings and the help of a few volunteers, began constructing a wooden playground, swings made of strong oak beams, a slide framed in polished cedar, and a climbing structure with little carved animals hidden in the railings. Every piece was sanded smooth by hand, every joint fitted with care. The sound of hammers and saws echoed through the park for weeks. Parents would stop by with coffee and sandwiches to thank him. Children pressed their faces against the fence, pointing and giggling as the structure slowly took shape. Daniel worked long into the evenings, his shirt damp with sweat, the scent of sawdust clinging to his clothes. Yet he smiled through the exhaustion, because he wasn't just building wood, he was building joy. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the playground in gold, Daniel sat back on a bench, wiping his brow. A group of children had wandered close, staring at the unfinished swings. "Is it almost ready, Mr. Harris?" one of them asked eagerly. "Almost," Daniel said with a grin. "Just a few more days, and it'll be yours. But when you play here, you've got to promise me something." The kids leaned in, eyes wide. "You have to take care of it," Daniel said gently, "because this isn't just wood. It's a gift for all of you, for the whole town." The children nodded solemnly, as though accepting an oath. Daniel chuckled softly, his heart full. He didn't know it then, but not everyone in the town would see his creation as a gift. And soon, his playground would spark a conflict that tested not just his craft, but his place in the community itself. The playground wasn't even finished before the first complaint came in. Daniel had been sanding down the edges of the slide when a sharp, clipped voice called from behind him. "Excuse me," the woman said, her tone laced with authority she hadn't earned. Daniel turned, wiping sawdust from his hands. Standing at the edge of the park was Karen Whitfield, a longtime resident known for filing more complaints than anyone else in Maplewood. With her pressed blouse, pearls, and ever-present clipboard, she looked less like a neighbor and more like an inspector on patrol. "Yes, ma'am?" Daniel asked politely. Karen pursed her lips, surveying the wooden beams and half-built swings. "And what exactly is this supposed to be?" Daniel smiled patiently. "A playground. For the kids in town. It'll be finished soon." Karen's eyebrows shot up. "A playground? Built without city approval? Without certified contractors? I don't recall any official plans being filed for such a structure." She tapped her pen against the clipboard with theatrical disdain. "It looks unsafe." Daniel's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice even. "I've been a carpenter for over 20 years. Every joint is reinforced, every piece of wood treated and sanded. Safety is my first concern," Karen sniffed. "Well, safety doesn't look like this. Exposed nails, splinter-prone wood, sharp edges. Why, it's a lawsuit waiting to happen." A few parents who had been watching from the benches spoke up. "That's not true, Karen. Daniel knows what he's doing. He built our porch, our gazebo, half the furniture on this block." But Karen ignored them. She was already scribbling something on her clipboard. "I'll be contacting the city inspection office immediately. This contraption doesn't meet code, I'm sure of it. Frankly, I'm shocked anyone would let their children near it." That evening, as Daniel packed up his tools, he overheard two neighbors talking. "Karen's at it again. She'll bury him in complaints. She just can't stand seeing someone else appreciated. You know how she is." Daniel tried to brush it off, but deep down, he felt the weight of what was coming. He wasn't worried about his craftsmanship. It was solid, and he knew it. But about the endless red tape Karen was about to unleash. And sure enough, 2 days later, a white city truck pulled up to the park. Two inspectors stepped out, clipboards in hand, as Karen hovered behind them with a triumphant smirk. "Mr. Harris," one inspector began, "we've received several formal complaints regarding this structure. We're here to take a closer look." Karen folded her arms, eyes gleaming. "Yes, please do. I've been very concerned about the safety of our children." Daniel exhaled slowly, bracing himself. He wasn't just fighting for his playground anymore. He was fighting against someone determined to tear down not just his work, but his reputation. The city inspectors walked slowly around the half-built playground, jotting notes as Karen hovered like a shadow at their shoulders. She kept pointing at beams, at joints, at anything she thought might look suspicious. "There," she said, tapping one polished railing with her pen. "That gap looks too wide. A child's arm could get stuck. And look at those swings. Far too high. Unsafe. Dangerous." One inspector crouched, running his hand along the cedar frame. "Actually," he murmured, "these joints are tight. Reinforced properly. No splintering here." Karen's lips tightened. "Well, perhaps you're missing something." The second inspector raised his clipboard. "We'll need to check for permits, weight limits, and official compliance with state standards. Even if the work is sound, Mr. Harris, projects like this usually require formal approval." Daniel stood calmly, arms folded. He was tired of Karen's theatrics, but he refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing him flustered. "I understand. I'll work with you however I can. I built this to last, and to be safe." Karen gave a sharp laugh. "Safe? This is an accident waiting to happen. And if you won't admit that, the city will." News of the inspection spread quickly through town. By evening, Daniel's phone buzzed with messages. Parents were furious, not at him, but at Karen. "She can't take this away from our kids. My daughter talks about the swings every day. You tell us what to do, Daniel. We'll back you." The next morning, a small group of families gathered at the park. Children clutched homemade signs, "Save our playground," and "Mr. Harris builds with love." Parents spoke with reporters, telling them how Daniel had donated his time and money, how his work had already brought neighbors together. When Karen appeared on the sidewalk, her expression turned sour at the sight of the crowd. "Oh, please," she scoffed. "This isn't about community. It's about rules. You can't just throw together some wooden contraption and call it safe." One mother stepped forward, her toddler perched on her hip. "This isn't just wood. It's care. It's pride. My son has never had a safe place to play until now. Don't you dare take this from him." The crowd murmured agreement. Daniel, standing quietly with his tool belt still slung around his waist, felt a lump rise in his throat. He hadn't asked for this fight, but seeing his neighbors rally gave him strength. The inspectors filed their report a week later. It listed only minor adjustments, smoothing two edges, adding extra guardrails. All things Daniel could fix in a single afternoon. But at the bottom was a note: "Community concerns remain. Recommend further hearings." Daniel knew exactly who those concerns belonged to. Karen wasn't done, not by a long shot. And as much as the town stood by him, he could feel the storm gathering. The following weeks turned the small park into a stage for something bigger than wood and nails. Every evening after work, Daniel returned to the playground to keep building, tightening bolts, sanding edges, and adding the extra safety features the inspectors had noted. But he wasn't alone anymore. Parents came carrying toolboxes, offering extra hands. High school students brought brushes and painted cheerful murals of flowers and animals along the railings. Children picked up scraps of wood and stacked them into little towers, pretending to help their favorite carpenter. What had started as one man's project was quickly becoming the town's. One Saturday morning, Daniel arrived to find a surprise. The entire playground was decorated with bright ribbons and paper hearts. On the climbing frame, someone had hung a banner. "Thank you, Mr. Harris." He stood frozen, the sunlight warming his face, his chest tight. Parents clapped as he walked closer, and children ran up to hug him. "We wanted you to know," one mother said softly. "This isn't just your playground anymore. It's ours too." Daniel swallowed hard, blinking back tears. "I only wanted to give the kids a place to laugh, to play. I never expected this. Meanwhile, Karen fumed. The more the community rallied, the more isolated she became. At town meetings, she stood up with her familiar complaints about rules and aesthetic standards. But this time, her words were met with sighs, rolled eyes, and even open challenges. A teacher stood to speak. "We teach our children to build, not to tear down. Mr. Harris built something good. Why are you trying to destroy it?" Another parent added, "If you want to talk about safety, fine. But don't pretend this is about the children. This is about you not liking that a black craftsman has become the heart of this town." Gasps rippled through the room, and Karen's face went red. For once, she had no sharp retort. The local newspaper ran a front-page feature titled, "Carpenter's Playground Brings Town Together." The article included photos of smiling children on the swings, quotes from parents praising Daniel's craftsmanship, and even an interview with one of the inspectors, who admitted, "This is some of the finest woodwork I've seen in years." By now, the playground was no longer just a set of swings and slides. It was a symbol of community pride, of resilience against unfairness, of something built with hands and heart. Daniel, standing under the half-finished roof of the playhouse one evening, looked out at the gathering of families. He realized this fight wasn't his burden alone anymore. The people had claimed it as their own, and that meant Karen would have to face not just him, but an entire town. The notice came on a gray Monday morning. By order of the city council, the unauthorized structure in Maplewood Park will be dismantled this Friday. Daniel read the letter twice, his hands tightening on the paper until it crumpled. Despite the community's support, despite the children's laughter that filled the park every day, the city had sided with Karen's relentless complaints. By evening, the news had spread across town. Parents exchanged angry texts, students posted on social media, and the playground that had once echoed with hammers now hummed with urgency. "We can't let this happen," one father said. "They'll take it apart piece by piece," whispered another. Daniel stood quietly, overwhelmed. He had built it with love, but maybe love wasn't enough to fight City Hall. Friday morning arrived, and so did the city crew. Trucks pulled up to the curb, workers in neon vests stepping out with toolboxes and crowbars. Karen was there too, standing with arms folded, her expression smug and satisfied. "This is for the best," she said loudly, as though rehearsing for the cameras. "Children's safety comes first." But when the workers approached the playground, they stopped short. A wall of people stood shoulder to shoulder around the structure. Parents, grandparents, teenagers, even children holding hands in a chain. Some carried signs, "Save our playground. This is our community. Built with love, not for demolition." Daniel was in the center, his tool belt strapped around his waist, standing tall though his heart pounded. "If you want to take this down," he said firmly, "you'll have to go through all of us." The workers hesitated. They weren't paid to fight crowds of angry neighbors. One of them scratched his head. "We just follow orders," he muttered. Karen pushed forward, her voice sharp. "Do your job! Tear it down already!" But the mayor, who had been called by reporters and showed up reluctantly, raised his hands. "Stop! This isn't safe to escalate." He looked at the crowd, hundreds of faces united, defiant. "We'll schedule a hearing before any action is taken." Cheers erupted. The workers packed up their tools, shaking their heads. Karen's face burned crimson as her victory slipped through her fingers. "You can't defy the council forever," she snapped at Daniel. "This isn't over." But as Daniel looked at the children climbing the swings, laughing as if the threat had never existed, he knew something had shifted. The city had seen the people's will, and this time, the people were on his side. The town hall was packed on the night of the hearing. Rows of folding chairs filled the chamber, every seat occupied and more people standing against the walls. The air buzzed with tension, half anticipation, half anger. At the front sat the city council, papers stacked before them, their faces drawn and wary. Karen was there too, her pearls gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights, her clipboard perched on her lap like a weapon she was ready to wield. Daniel sat quietly in the front row, his calloused hands folded in his lap. He hadn't written a speech. He wasn't a politician, and he didn't know how to twist words, but he had his truth, and he trusted that would be enough. The hearing began with Karen. She stood, her voice sharp and rehearsed. This so-called playground, she declared, was built without permits, without oversight, and without regard for safety. It is not only an eyesore in our park, but a liability to this town. If we allow anyone to construct whatever they want on public land, where does it end? This isn't community pride. It's recklessness. She finished with a triumphant glance toward the council, certain her argument had landed. But then, one by one, the townspeople rose to speak. A mother stepped forward first, holding her child's hand. Mr. Harris built more than a playground. He built a place where my daughter finally feels safe to play. He did what the city wouldn't do. You call it reckless? I call it a gift. A retired teacher followed. For years, we've asked the council for improvements to the park. Nothing happened until Daniel. He gave us something beautiful. And now you want to destroy it because of paperwork? Shame on you. Then came Jamal, a teenager with paint-stained fingers. I helped paint the railings. For the first time, I felt like I contributed to something the whole town can enjoy. Please don't take that away. The voices kept coming. Parents, grandparents, students, even the inspectors, who admitted on record that the structure was safe and sturdy. The chamber filled with story after story, each one a brick in the wall of support around Daniel. Finally, the chair of the council leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. His voice was solemn but clear. We have listened to both sides. While it is true the playground was constructed without formal approval, the overwhelming testimony of this community demonstrates its value. Effective immediately, the council recognizes the structure as a community asset. It will remain in Memorial Park and will be formally designated as public property under city protection. The room exploded in applause. Parents cheered, children clapped, neighbors embraced. Daniel sat stunned, his heart pounding as relief washed over him. He hadn't realized how tightly he'd been holding his breath until that moment. Karen's face, however, was stone, her lips pressed into a thin line, her knuckles white as she gripped her clipboard. For once, her voice failed her. Daniel rose slowly to his feet, looking around at the sea of faces that had defended his work. He saw pride in their eyes, not just pride in the playground, but in what they had stood for together. And for the first time, he realized this was bigger than carpentry. This was about belonging. The day of the official reopening dawned bright and clear, as if even the weather had chosen to celebrate. The entire park buzzed with excitement, families setting up picnic blankets, children darting around with balloons, and a local band tuning their instruments under the shade of the old oak trees. The once uncertain playground now stood proudly in the center, polished and gleaming with fresh coats of paint and sturdy beams that bore the marks of countless loving hands. At the entrance, a new bronze plaque had been mounted on a carved wooden post. It read, "The Maplewood Playground, built by Daniel Harris and the community, a gift of love and craftsmanship." When the mayor stepped up to the small podium, his words were almost drowned out by the sound of children laughing on the swings behind him. "Today," he said, "we honor not just a playground, but the spirit of this town, built with care, defended with unity, and cherished by all. May it stand as a reminder of what we can achieve when we come together." Applause rippled through the crowd, but it was nothing compared to the roar that followed when Daniel himself was invited to speak. He walked slowly to the front, his hands rough and scarred from years of work, his heart heavier than his toolbox had ever been. Looking out at the faces before him, the same people who had stood shoulder to shoulder to protect his work, he felt his throat tighten. "I don't have fancy words," Daniel began softly. "I only have these hands. They've built porches, chairs, fences. But this playground, this was the most important thing I've ever built, because it wasn't just mine. It was ours." The crowd cheered and a group of children chanted, "Thank you, Mr. Harris." Daniel smiled, blinking back tears. "This plaque may have my name on it, but the truth is, every one of you built this. You fought for it. You proved that what we build together is stronger than what anyone tries to tear down. This playground belongs to the children and to the future of this town. As he stepped back, the ribbon was cut and the playground was officially opened. Children rushed forward, climbing the slide, swinging higher than ever, their laughter echoing like music. Parents watched with pride, snapping photos, some wiping their eyes. Daniel stood to the side, arms crossed loosely, a quiet smile on his face. For him, the joy of the children was the only speech that mattered. Across the park, Karen lingered in the shadows. Her pearls caught the sunlight, but her eyes stayed downcast. The town no longer listened to her. No one even noticed when she turned and left in silence. That evening, as the sun set and the sky glowed orange and gold, Daniel sat on a bench watching families still gathered, unwilling to leave. Elijah, one of the little boys who had waited weeks for the swings, shouted as he soared through the air, "This is the best playground ever!" Daniel chuckled softly to himself, feeling the weight of the moment. For the first time, he realized that what he had built was no longer just wood and nails. It was memory. It was pride. It was his legacy, etched not into plaques or speeches, but into the laughter of a town that had claimed his work as its own. And no one, not even Karen, could take that away.